Hi everyone, Kwebe Koti here, founder of the Bushwick Film Festival, extending a warm welcome to the Bushwick Film Festival's podcast. I am so excited to have you join us as we connect with BFF filmmakers and speakers, delve into captivating discussions about our most beloved films and shows, as well as with the extraordinary individuals who are shaping the film and TV industry today.
In today's episode, we will be featuring a panel discussion from this year's 16th BFF Movie Industry Conference, presented by B Electric Studios and Broadway Stages. Our first panel is Film and AI, The Next Chapter, moderated by Adam Newhouse, principal at Newhouse Ideas. Panelists include Nikki Williams, Senior Manager of Production and Development at Nickelodeon, Amelia David, a reporter covering AI for The Verge, Frank Rose, author and Senior Fellow at Columbia University.
I'm going to go to you, Amelia, on this one. You came from studying banking, fintech, and that it was being used, AI, quite a lot over the last 5 years. It seems to me that there are industries that are ripe to immediately use applications, and there's ones where it's going to be slowly rolled in. Can you talk about your perspective on that?
A lot of people's perceptions about generative AI is kind of muddling up the good things, the industries that are actually going to benefit from AI, because people think you say AI, you mean the world is ending. Like, that's not true. First of all, we don't have enough NVIDIA GPUs to run existing models. The benefits really is around just like the workflow for so many manual jobs, essentially. I was speaking to a startup the other day, and they have a platform that will help productions of movies and TV shows to streamline their business. And by that, they use an AI to build a database of casting agents within a certain area of location scouts. And eventually, this company will also be able to help producers and writers build pitch decks with visuals without needing to take months to create a storyboard. It'll help them. All they need to do is this is the gist of the story, the feel that we want, and the style of another director that we kind of want to emulate, but tweak a little bit. And those are things that will really help make a lot of the workflows faster and cheaper. So there are so many industries where those kinds of manual work are very much ripe for it, but a lot of the other more regulated, restricted areas like healthcare, we have to be a little bit more careful because there's data privacy involved, but as long as the workflow isn't touching on someone's social security number, you should be fine.
Talk to us about workflow, Nikki. Workflow and cost.
Yeah, so the workflow aspect is a game changer for us. Absolute game changer. When you start thinking about sort of the ills of our industry in terms of overworking people in the visual effects community and the animation community, to be able to load in your data set from your studio. So I'm DreamWorks, and I'm loading in every prop that was ever designed. I've got a massive data set, just the ones that I designed at DreamWorks, just DreamWorks property, not going outside of what we own. You have changed the game in terms of what you'd be able to do with what you already have. So then maybe you're not overworking people and you're able to get further faster. Now, then you start thinking about things like residuals. You start thinking about forecasting out box office. And you really start thinking about what the power of AI can do from both a business standpoint, an asset standpoint. You think about, like you were talking about storyboards. Well, this is a great question for us. There is an entire industry of people who do both live action and animation storyboards. It's a fundamental part of the process. Does it make sense to throw your storyboards into AI? You're doing away with a whole group of artisans, but you might be able to further control your budget, spend more actually paying humans in other areas, and not waste as much. So what do you do? What do you do? What are those questions? And I think we have a lot of ethical concerns that can actually benefit the artistic community, but that might cost us in other areas.
It's interesting because you're an EIC, and so I know that part of your corporate thing is how to get more done for cheaper. Right?
It is true. And I think the unfortunate thing is that the knee-jerk reaction is to erase the human in order to get to cheaper. And so I think the onus is on us to think about how to keep everybody in, find a way to make the workflow work that we keep everybody in. It just may adjust where they fit in. I think about photographers, right? Back in the day, you would take your photograph, you'd go into a dark room, and you'd literally use your hands to make and mold where the lighting was and to alter it. Well, people are very upset. That's not a photograph when you pull it into Adobe. It's not a photograph. That's some digital art. But now, do that on your phone right now before you put it up for everyone to see. And so I think some of this, so I can't remember which one of you say, some of this is an attitude shift and shifting the job. So now you can be a digital artist versus just being someone who's really good at manipulating it manually.
Yeah, there's a paper that came out recently from MIT in which the authors looked at different scenarios for AI and what it would mean for people's jobs. And what they found was essentially that when in situations where AI was used as an aid, say as a helper, it benefited everyone. It benefited the workers that they were helping. It benefited the bosses, the companies, the shareholders. But in situations where the AI was used to replace people, and obviously I'm not meaning this as a blanket statement, but in situations where people were being replaced, it essentially was a transfer of wealth from workers to capital. And so I think that's a consideration that has to be taken into account, especially because, the kind of knee-jerk reaction I feel is going to be, these humans have to have time off, and they have lunch, and they get sick, and they do all these things that why should we put up with this? I feel like Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, recently said in an interview, jobs are going to be lost, full stop, right? So there's no way around that. The question is, not just how many jobs, but what kind of jobs and to what effect.
Thanks for tuning into the 16th Annual Bushwick Film Festival Movie Industry Conference, presented by B Electric Studios and Broadway Stages. We hope you are enjoying the conversation.
A lot of people, when they find that out, have that knee-jerk reaction of, wait, no, I want to keep my job. But before even trying to see if it helps them, I know a lot of journalists have been oh, we're going to be replaced, but there's also a lot of journalists who's although it has helped us a little bit, yes.
Well, I think both of you raised a great point about it, and that is, for example, maybe we have less storyboard artists, but we have a lot of other folks in the other areas, right? So is it that human beings are replaced, or is their function in the system changing and shifting? And so I think there's an X factor that we don't know yet, right? I think about how music licensing works and how hard it is to figure out, well, that's the bass line that they took. And those lyrics are kind of similar, but it's not quite the same song, right? And so we've had a really difficult time trying to figure out what that means. And then you pulled all of the beats into was it Ableton? What's the one where you're pushing the buttons, right? Right, and so it's is that music? What is it? Have we replaced musical artists? Well, no, right? We've all got music that we love that's based in that way. It just means that you had to people had to focus in other areas of creating art using the technology that we have. And I think we're at the part where we don't really know what the art of AI is. We're still in the figuring it out phase.
And speaking of data and storytelling, Frank, you're obviously spent a lot of time thinking about this, and you just rewrote the open for the paperback version of your book. Could you talk a bit about what it's like to write something about AI that's coming out in 6 months, and what you wrote about overall?
So yes, The Sea We Swim In is coming out in paperback in February. I sort of rashly decided to write a new introduction about AI, and then I started actually thinking about it. But what was fascinating to me was, how AI is going to change our conception of ourselves, and sort of the focus for me of that was the idea of species panic. I feel like this is something that's been bubbling under for many years, and every time a machine would win a chess game, and then it became a game of Go, and so forth. There would be like a little moment of panic, and then it would go away. It's not going away now, and it's only going to get much more intense. There was a fascinating article in, of all places, Foreign Affairs magazine by Mustafa Suleyman, who is one of the co-founders of Google DeepMind, in which he sort of talked about what is going on there, and how people are going to respond, and how to control it. If it can be controlled, and that's the real question. But the thing that really fascinated me that he mentioned was that now something like GPT-4 has something like 1 trillion parameters, and a parameter being roughly equivalent to connection, like a synapse in the brain. And within a couple of years, he said there would be more like 10 trillion parameters, and within 5 years, it would be 100 trillion parameters, which is, as he put it, brain scale. Now, brain scale means what you think it means. It means that, an AI is going to have roughly the same number of connections to the human brain, but it will, of course, think very differently. And when that happens, it's going to be an entirely different game.
I saw a phrase which I liked called augmented intelligence. Maybe I read it in maybe one of your articles, possibly. I like that phrase. I think it goes to a little bit like what we're talking about. How do we use this as kind of helpers? Also, I know that, when Gary Kasparov took on Deep Blue in 1997 and lost, now your app on chess could beat any player in the world. But I know they're now doing championships with humans and AI working together, and that actually the grandmaster and the AI do worse than the just normal expert in the AI, which I thought was really interesting. And so thinking about how do we incorporate this? Is this a bad metaphor? The metaphor was like using Google as like a better search tool than doing research another way. Like, you're still going to lose on some stuff, and you still have to go deep research, but it's right there and easier. Tell me, poke holes in that, please.
First of all, Google search is already integrated with Bard. So it's already generative AI. And Google search has always had a form of AI. People don't realize it, but everything we've touched has had AI since a lot of these internet companies have come around. But it's a little bit of an apt analogy, because we went from, I'm dating myself here, pulling out a card catalog and going and memorizing the Dewey Decimal System, to knowing what a good Boolean search is for a search query. And then we also got into the point where no one knows Boolean search, because they just say, what is blah, blah, blah. Like, it's a little bit like that. But technology, especially big, large databases, like what a lot of these large language models like GPT, Llama 2, and Bard are, is helping us process more things where we couldn't process them before, or that it would take us so much time to look for that information. That is a feature that doesn't have to be generative AI. It just so happens that generative AI makes those calculations much faster to answer those questions. It does not generally, though, answer those questions correctly. But that doesn't mean that if you were just using a card catalog and then going through an encyclopedia or reading a research paper, doesn't mean you were getting the correct information anyway. Those information always had to be vetted. We've seen a lot of journal articles be pulled before. So it makes the process of cross-checking facts faster. What the issue now is that we've gotten so used to researching on Google that we believe Google is always correct. But search on Google has been degrading for quite a while. So now that the generative AI, I like that it's pushing more people to do the Wikipedia test, where you have to go down to the very bottom and double check that fact. More people are doing that now just with basic searches because they don't quite trust what it's given them. So it's an apt analogy, but I'll take it a little bit further and say we've always needed to be more augmented. We were just finding slower, more manual ways to do that. Technology is just helping us move there faster.
I think that totally makes sense. There's also the issue of hallucination. AIs tend to hallucinate, as it's called, and there was the example of there was a New York attorney who, maybe this is kind of a famous example at this point, but it was certainly, so he used ChatGPT to come up with his legal brief, and then it was discovered that the AI made up cases totally out of whole cloth, like the cases didn't exist. It sounded good until you actually sort of looked into, what these cases were, which in fact there were nothing. But that gets to your point too about checking the references in Wikipedia. When I was at Wired, it was not allowed to use Wikipedia as a source. The reason was because people, manipulated all the time. And, as much as the guardians of Wikipedia try to prevent that, it can't happen always. So, so you have to go back to the source. You have to check, whether it's Wikipedia, whether it's Google, whether it's ChatGPT. There's no free lunch there.
Yeah, bringing it back to the strikes and that are the one that's ongoing and the one that just ended, I think, I was around for the strike at the end of the 2000s, and I remember, I don't know if y'all remember the web series The Guild, and everyone was talking about what is the future of how people are going to consume television, because you can remember at that time it was weird to watch something so long, like with such a long runtime online, like on a computer. That was like the weirdest thing ever. And rightfully, writers and actors are asking the question, well, how am I exactly going to get paid for all this work? Like, how is this going to work? And we see this thing happening with streaming. Let's put a timeout real quick and figure it out before we just run for it. We'll cut to now. The industry has imploded. We can't justify the budgets. People think they can consume content or I shouldn't call it content. They can consume whatever it is they choose to watch, like popcorn. I can just eat another one, don't like it, go to the next one. How does all that get funded? How do you pay for it? And there was a model in place already that got people paid, and now, mostly paid. And now we're in a situation where the business is in turmoil, trying to figure out how do we pay and keep our subscribers happy and keep the business going. And we haven't really figured it out, but I think the actors and the writers, rightfully so, said, time out, man. We got to figure this out because we're running really fast. And so to your point, I think the workers and the artisans who are making this, they are well within their right to be the canary in the coal mine saying, we are running fast and free, and we're going to implode the very thing that we enjoy doing.
It was like a productive business model dismantled on purpose. Also, if anyone has questions, I think Q&As are kind of like hallucinations as well. So if anybody's got a question, feel free to raise your hand and we'll incorporate it through. So I have one more kind of prompt. Oh yeah, there you go. One more prompt. So, you know, film equipment was so expensive and then it got less expensive. So it was like, great, you can go make a film with your friends as long as you have a location, right? You don't need much, you can go do it. I'm wondering, when I think of the most popular content stories of the 21st century, pretty much Marvel / superhero stuff. And I wonder, with AI and the ability to create worlds, that was always the thing that you couldn't do on yourself with at home. And that you could only make that with a massive amount of capital through these huge conglomerates. And so I wonder, are we going to enter an indie world building phase that we've never quite had before?
There was a really interesting quote I read a while back by a top Disney executive who said, you know, on the question of these blockbusters and whether they were going to implode, cause Hollywood to implode, which for a while looked like it actually might happen. On the question of that, he said, you know, our strategic advantage is that nobody else can afford to make these movies, and you know, that was very much the case. You know, I think that world building, though, is something that you know, goes beyond what Marvel can do, what any company like that can do, and I think world building is critically important, but what's most important is that you understand why. Why is it happening? You know, why have we gone from the simple idea of a setting, you know, every story has a setting, why have we gone from that to the idea of creating a world? And the reason for that, I think, is that neuroscience and cognitive psychology have shown us that basically people understand stories by imaginatively projecting themselves into those stories. And when you realize that, then you realize that you know, it's much more than a setting. It's a world that people want to project themselves into. This happened before digital, but it didn't happen all that you know, it didn't happen all that much, and it didn't happen you know, as a result of some strategy or something. One of the best examples is Sherlock Holmes, right? I mean, Arthur Conan Doyle created this crazy world that was so popular that he couldn't even, you know, kill off his main character, even though he tried. And so, you know, what really technology is showing us, I think, is that is something that has always been the case, but was, you know, previously only occasionally revealed. And that is, you know, the importance of world building.
Yeah, I don't know if this is a spicy comment or what, but I actually don't think that the world building is the question. I think that right now, Pesto Girl, how many of y'all know who the Pesto Girl, right? Y'all know who the Pesto Girl is. Stories are infinite now. The kid who did the Legos, who then wound up in the Spider-Man, like, people are doing it already. They're building worlds, they're doing it. I don't think that's the question. I think the question is around marketing. How do you cut through the noise? Because you can build a million different wonderful worlds. People are having superhero fatigue. People are tired of Star Wars, frankly, and like all of the different iterations and having to keep up with so much of Marvel and all of these worlds and everything being blown up. That, to me, I think that's already, we're already past that. I think it's, how do you get anybody to watch yours? And I hope maybe AI has some answers there. I don't know.
Indie filmmakers have been building worlds and creating sci-fi, fantasy, superhero movies for so long. The success of Everything Everywhere All at Once is exactly proof of that. They found a way to do that world, to build that world, make that movie for so much cheaper because they found people who were willing to buy in onto their ideas, and then it won an Oscar. You don't really need AI to figure out how, like, yes, you can use AI to help you save money around that, but if you have an idea, people have always been doing movies in that way. Like, it's just like, it is a matter of cutting through marketing. It is also a matter of just like finding the right people to hear, see, and watch.
Thanks for tuning into the 16th Annual Bushwick Film Festival Movie Industry Conference, presented by Electric Studios and Broadway Stages. We hope you are enjoying the conversation.
Well, for starters, I mean, there's Joseph Campbell's The Monomyth, right? You can make the argument, we already have that as an issue. When it comes to Harry Potter being the same movie as Star Wars, being the same movie as and, right? Then you start thinking about, it takes a human and their way at it in order to make it special and allow there to be space for both Star Wars and Harry Potter, right? And when you're experiencing it, you don't feel like you're watching the same thing, but it is the same thing. I can make the argument that the story of Jesus is also the same story, right? So we have that, and I think it's all about, again, finding exactly what she said. Like, there are so many people who put their own twist and their own way at it that I think that is the human spirit. That is what we are. We're storytellers, and we do it. Like, Raj just had the script that was based on his own research and his own way of the world. So we'll always ever be wanting to tell our stories. This is just a tool for how to do that, and I think those are the things as humans we will connect to the thing that's real, and the stuff that feels like the sixth finger and the AI or the echoes, or what was it called? The hallucinations. Like, I think those things will fall to the wayside.
We also have human trauma and grief, which is the ultimate wellspring for storytelling. So until AI can really, and unfortunately we're very good as a species of continuing that.
On the more technical standpoint, there is a concept of it's kind of called model death, in that AI, if trained on information that was created by AI, eventually just creates like an Ouroboros loop of just repeating the same thing over and over again. So tech companies are trying to avoid that. And the fantastic thing about human beings is that we constantly create new content, and we're constantly putting new things on the internet for these models to continue learning from. In terms of creativity, though, I don't exactly know how AI could kind of change that, because AI isn't creative right now. Yes, we use the term generative AI, but it doesn't actually generate anything. It generates things that are similar to other things it's learned from. So that's what's going to happen if it continues learning from AI, and it takes a human being to guide that process into something interesting, creative, and I would posit not exactly new, because not a lot of things are new. Avatar is basically Pocahontas. So like, that's kind of where the human could be, is to put that into a specific situation that relates to so many more people.
You know, the thing about generative AI and how it works, as I understand it, is essentially it's sort of a completion game, right? So the AI is trained on millions and millions and millions of text, and what it actually learns is, what's the word that's going to come next, and it sort of appears intelligent, but that's probably, I think, the reason that we have these hallucinations, that AIs generate stuff that makes no sense whatsoever. And I was thinking that, well, there's a real difference between AIs and humans, and then I was wondering, is it really? Am I just trying to think of what word to say next? When I'm on a panel like this, sometimes that seems to be the case. But anyway, the whole the whole thing about AIs and how they work now is, I think, liable to be quite different a few years from now. But But, we'll just have to see.
I tackle the first question first. Number one, the idea of competition is very, very strong, especially in AI. We are never going to see one corporate entity in just using AI because we're already seeing all of these companies refusing to even share their research outside. That is a big problem because technology like this must be open to other researchers and developers for a more diverse voice. The problem with AI is the problem with the data it has is that data in our world is inherently biased. So you need competition to basically push all of these companies to be better about the data that they're taking in and to be better about the results that they have. In terms of making and creating smaller systems, there's actually research has come out that there's companies that are using AI to replace people haven't been doing fantastic. Companies that are using AI to enhance people's jobs is making money and freeing a lot of people to stop working on data entry jobs that, to be honest, no one really wants to do all of that. And the issue lies in how do we then reskill workers to stop thinking of we just want to do the typey thing, and to help them be actually more creative and unlock that part of themselves. And AI in some ways can be good at that, and in some ways it can't, because like I said, AI isn't creating, it's only repeating patterns it knows. So maybe there should be more education around learning how to write for AI, or to use the tool and help them write better, or things like that. But yes, we will probably see fewer jobs for people. But if more companies are starting to use AI, they also need people to help guide that, to help fact check that, to help do a lot of these things to maintain those systems. And you find people who have the understanding of those companies, of those studios, of that work, and they will be much better positioned to help guide that. So yes, their jobs are going to change, but they're still probably going to find other ways to use that and do those jobs. And on the second part, AI isn't creative. AI right now is repeating patterns, and that pattern is the creativity coming from everyone else. And that is why a lot of people are very and rightly concerned about their copyrighted material being fed into these AI models and then spitting out the same exact thing, and then they can't monetize that. That is completely unfair for smaller artists, for smaller musicians, and for a lot of smaller writers as well. It's already so hard to break through this cloud of content that we have. So a thing that AI companies must do is tell everyone where their data is coming from and allow copyright holders to say, well, I would love to be paid royalties for whatever you're going to use my book for, my work for. I think that's the important part, is that's how you protect people's creativity, by letting them keep making money out of their creativity. That's the big problem with AI, is that it will stop a lot of people from making money out of their own work. And so we have to get people, the AI developers, accountable to protect those copyrights.
Yeah, actually, Ra, I think a lot about the other part of this business that would really talk about your first question. I think about the convergence of blockchain and smart contracts and artificial intelligence, and then that makes me think about residuals from the other side of it. So right now, I happen to know in the basement of any guild are a bunch of those checks, and people are owed thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, and they're manually having to go into something and figure out, what is this person owed based on a contract from however long ago, and how do we get it to them, and where are they? And I do believe in my fantastical sci-fi brain that there is a future there where humans don't have to figure all of that out, and there are paper checks lost in the basement of somewhere, that there's a smart contract that's triggered based upon how many times something was used, and then it instantly just like deposits that money into a creator's account. And that's like me leapfrogging where we are now into the hope in the future of what this can do and to create efficiencies. I think there's something really brilliant there. And I think they said everything else. I just don't think that it is possible for humans to be the human creative spirit to be eradicated or nixed from the end results. And I think about Disney and how people used to draw every single frame, right? We don't do that anymore. That's abusive. And I just hope that the same can be true of like other aspects of the creative part of things, but it frees people up to be more creative if they're fairly compensated.
Well, I think an AI panel should always end on a happy note like that. There were some other paths to go through. So I think a round of applause for our esteemed folks here. I had about 1,000 more questions, so this is good. We'll end here for now, and thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Bushwick Film Festival's podcast. It's been great having you with us to explore the world of film and storytelling. Don't forget to join us for the next episode as we continue to uncover the insights and stories from the heart of the industry. Take care, and we'll catch you next time. The Bushwick Film Festival is a registered 501c3 nonprofit organization with a mission to discover emerging voices, share great stories, and build community through the power of film. As an MWBE organization, we are proud to be part of the 12% of film festivals in the U.S. that are owned by women of color. Discover more about our mission at www.bushwickfilmfestival.com. And if it resonates with you, consider supporting us through a tax-deductible contribution. Together, we can continue to foster a vibrant and inclusive film community that celebrates unique voices.